The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Welcome back to Keefer and Kurre here. Another great edition on the last day of March as we record the show tomorrow, of course, April 1st. And that means we're getting ever so close to a Final Four and March Madness. He is Kip Keefer. I am Tony Kurre. We do a show on ABC 3340 called The Starting Lineup. It's going to be a huge show coming this Saturday, Kip, because we're actually doing that show live on Saturday. And so it's going to be all about the Final Four. And, of course, we got Florida, Auburn, Houston, and Duke. I want to talk about that. I can't wait. You and I talk about relationships. We talk about all kinds of things in the show. You and I love sports. This is the best time of the year. I hate the fact that it's going by so fast. It lasts about 3 weeks, whereas the NBA playoffs last like 4 months. We got to figure out a way to make this last longer. If we add twice as many teams, we will get another weekend out of this, which is what we need to do. College basketball deserves to go at least a month with postseason play, period. We are going to add some teams next year, 8 to 10 teams. I don't know if that's going to add a weekend or not. But, I mean, looking up and seeing 4 or 5 different scores going off, you got all the games are on. All the games are televised. Every game is televised. It's fantastic. And all of a sudden you get down and you're watching one game and you're like, okay, where's the other games? And there's no other games on. I mean, I'm in the fetal position on the floor. I am like, I've got the DTs. I am going crazy. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the Final Four. We got the early lines on that. Have you seen the early lines on the Final Four, by the way?
I did see that Duke was about, what were they? Were they 4.5?
4.5, and Florida is 2.5. I've got to bring this up because right now I rank in the top 97% of all brackets on the ESPN Challenge. And I'm not doing that to gloat. I'm just saying my son Santo, when he was 12, won our bracket challenge up at Jocks 94.5. Him and Ryan Brown came down to the championship game. He was 12. And I said, son, winning a bracket challenge is almost like winning a Super Bowl. It's great. You've always got to hang your hat on, but you really don't get respect unless you win 2. And then the next year at the age of 13, he did it again. And I said, at that point, I don't care how old you are, because anybody, a blind squirrel, can find the nut once in a while, okay?
Sure.
We know that mathematically speaking, it's 1 in a quintillion or something. It's 1 in 29 zeros to have a perfect bracket, but it's actually 1 in 121 billion if you actually know what's going on in college basketball. You can obviously, your odds go up because we have numbers to look at and stats to look at. So I want to talk about that. I had 7 of the Elite 8. I got my Final Four intact. I have Florida and Duke playing for a national title. There's absolutely no reason for me to go off those games right now, so I'm just going to take money line on both those. Huge coming up this next week. And then I went down to the BJCC and watched me some Sweet 16, some Elite 8. There is a game going on later on tonight, and Texas, of course, going to be playing in that game. Have you got a chance? Are you into women's basketball at all?
No, but I follow at this point. I know who's playing and I know what the final score is. I don't watch the games really. I just haven't really. I'm going to sound like just an arrogant.
No, that's fine. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
Jerky man here. It has nothing to do with their gender. It has nothing to do with any of that. I'm spoiled by the athleticism in the men's game, the speed of the men's game. The women's game is not that compelling to watch. Yesterday, the big matchup between South Carolina and Duke was 54-50. Mm-hmm. That's a halftime score.
How about that Duke North Carolina game the other day?
Oh, that was a rousing game.
It was it 45-37? I think the final score was. Yeah, I mean those are hard to watch.
It is, and maybe it's just the way Duke plays because South Carolina's got just an outrageously good, talented team. And I know you went down and watched them, so I'm interested to hear what your take is. But the game just isn't the same. And again, people say, well, the women play with a lot more precision and everything else. I will say this about the women. I'm broad enough in Vegas last year, my youngest son and I attended one of the WNBA final round playoff games, the Las Vegas Aces against the New York Liberty. And I'm telling you, Tony, you watch these guys clank free throws. Those girls do not miss a free throw.
No.
They are unbelievable. They had a promotion at the Aces game during the finals that if they miss two, let's say if they miss twice, you get a slice. They had a pizza place affiliated right there in the complex, and if somebody went to the line for the other team and missed 2 free throws, everybody got a free slice of pizza.
Nice.
So every time somebody went to the line and they made the first one, the whole crowd was like, ugh. It was like a big bummer. I just unhooked my headphones. I'll repair that in just a second.
That's right.
But the bottom line is that finally, late in the game, a New York girl strode to the line, and damn if she didn't miss the first one, and then she missed the second one, and the biggest cheer of the night. It was great. So, I give them tons of credit. There are many great, and there have been many great female basketball players. I just not that into the sport, the pace of the game, and the athleticism.
Yeah, so the BJCC is going to be hosting, of course, Texas and TCU a little bit later on tonight, 6 o'clock. UCLA, South Carolina already in. You got USC and UConn, and the other side is 1s against 2s. And so I did go down there and I watched Texas beat Tennessee 67-59. By the way, Tennessee fans are fantastic. I mean, it's the first time I've seen a women's Tennessee. I wish I had seen Pat Summitt when she was actually coaching for Tennessee.
No kidding. Boy, she had it going on.
Yeah, and then Tennessee or TCU and Notre Dame were fantastic to their fan base, and it was almost sold out down at the BJCC. It was like 11,000 something or other down there, so it was fantastic. But you said something at the beginning of this. You said the game is different. And I was like, that's exactly right. It is different. It's not like if you go to a women's basketball game thinking you're going to see a men's basketball game in women's clothes, you're going to be sadly disappointed. It's a totally different game. It needs to be a totally different game. And because it's a totally different game, it's a lot of fun to watch. My son actually was the one that came in town from Clemson. He goes, I want to go to the Sweet 16. He loves seeing events. He wants to see history. He wants to see, we went to the World Games, because he wants to see history. He wants to see things in his life. He wants to experience all these things. And I said, that'd be great. And I said, I couldn't believe we got in for $10 a piece, which was fantastic. We saw both games at Elite Eight, both games for $20 a piece. We got a full day of entertainment. It was fantastic. Now, with the hot dogs and everything, we were into the thousands. By the way, the BJCC can nail you on the.
They gouge you a little bit.
Oh, geez, Louise. But what I was going down there and watching was I was asking my son, because my son's pretty knowledgeable, and I said, what are the difference in rules? And he had no clue. And so we can learn a little something here. Do you know any of the subtle differences between men and women's basketball in college?
Do you have any idea? They play 4 quarters.
They do play 4 quarters. They play 4 10-minute quarters. Men play 2 20-minute halves.
Yeah.
For example, do you know how many fouls you have to get in a quarter to go to the free throw line?
It is by the quarter. It's not by the half.
It's by the quarter. Yes.
I would say probably 5.
Okay, it's 4.
Okay.
So if you get 4 team fouls, the other team goes to the penalty line. There is no 1-and-1. They don't have a 1-and-1. It's all 2 shots. So anything after 4 fouls, and by the way, they don't shoot a lot of free throws. You were mentioning women in free throws, and I'll get into this. Women over the last 30 years in college and pro typically shoot 3.7% better from the line, the free throw line, than men do.
They're automatic.
From the field, it's about even, okay? Across the sports and men and women's, it's about even. So I didn't know it took 4 fouls, so I was like, okay, that's interesting to know. You get 6 fouls in order to foul out. So in men's, it's 5. I know in the pros, it's 6. I didn't know this. Did you know that women use a different size basketball?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It's slightly smaller.
Yeah, if you go to Dick's Sporting Goods and you ask them for a basketball, they'll go, what size? And you go, basketball size. They'll go, no, what size basketball? And I'm like, I want a basketball. A basketball, a regular basketball. Well, what kind of basketball? Are you talking? You want a Harlem Globetrotters basketball? You want women's basketball? You want WNBA basketball? I said, is there a difference? And they got size 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just to know, women's basketball is a size 6. Men's basketball is a size 7, and women's basketball is about an inch smaller than men's. The circumference 28.5 inches. Men's is 29.5 inches. Okay. The basket is still the same height, the same width, the same everything. And it's 2 ounces lighter than men's basketballs. Men's basketballs are 22 ounces and women's basketballs are 20 ounces.
How about that?
There is no 10-second rule in women's basketball. They have a shot clock, but they can take all the time they want to get it over the half court line. I had
no idea.
Yeah, I had no idea myself. I had no idea. Is the 3-point line in college the same for women and men?
No, I don't think so.
It is. It is. I didn't realize that. Yeah, it's 22 and 1
because they just moved
inches.
the men's back a few years ago, so that surprises me.
3-point line in college for men and women's is the same, 22 and 1 3/4 inches from the center of the basket. Now in the WNBA, it's 23 feet 9 inches. The WNBA is 22 and 1 3/4. In other words, women's college and women's pros are the same. So, but women don't have to shoot as far in pros, but in colleges they do. So I'm sitting there watching, and cut me off whenever you want, but I just want to kind of go on a rant because I went down there. I went down there to support women's basketball. And anytime, listen, you and I did an entire show on pickleball. By the way, that thing's got like 42,000 views. Our pickleball thing. It takes a little while in the podcast world, but we got like 42,000 views on our pickleball podcast. You can go back and watch it. Go to TKR, look for Tony Kurre Radio Podcast. You can see all of our shows. We're doing really well. Thank you very much. So anytime we got a new sport or something new, I'm all about it. I'm not going to, I've given soccer a shot for 35 years. I'm kind of over soccer because I'm over it. It's never going to win me over, but I gave it a shot. And that's not to say that I wouldn't go see it. But
remember, Tony, Al Del Greco told you it's not the lack of scoring in soccer that's exciting. It's the opportunity to score.
Opportunity to score, which is just like my love life too. So I'm going to myself, okay. And there was a woman in front of me who was a big Tennessee fan, and I'm talking to my son, and Tennessee at one point was 1 for 14 from 3-point land. When women shoot a 3-point shot, it looks different because they can't use all of their legs like men do. Men use all their legs and they shoot. Women have to use their arms and their legs to shoot from 3-point land. And I'm not saying anything. I'm not crushing on women's basketball.
Biological.
I'm trying to tell you why women's basketball is the way it is so you can enjoy it next time you go. Because I'm going back down there at 6 o'clock tonight because we're see history tonight. So what I noticed, though, is crazy because they shot 19.2% from 3-point land, 37.7%, and that 37.7% went way up in the second half. They only scored 9 points in the fourth quarter. It was 50-50 going the fourth quarter. They ended up losing by 8 points. It was 67-59. And so I was trying to figure out why they were missing so many damn layups. I mean, right under the basket, they were throwing clunkers. It got to the point where if it was a men's game, I might have left. That's how bad it was. The last time I counted, I think it was 14 layups. When I say a layup, I'm talking that corner shot right there underneath the basket. It doesn't have to be a layup where you lay it in. Just shoot it right there in the corner off. It's the easiest shot to make and get basketball right there underneath the hoop or near the hoop within 2 or 3 feet.
Right along the baseline, yeah.
Exactly, within 2 or 3 feet. So I couldn't figure out why they were missing that damn shot so often. And I've never heard this discussed, and I may be totally wrong, but I think I'm right. Women shoot the basketball differently than men do.
Oh, they absolutely do.
We've got the standard throw. We know exactly how we shoot, and we know we learn. But typically, women are anywhere from 4 to 6 to 7 inches shorter than men. And because of their shortness, if they're underneath the basket or they're slightly outside the basket, they're rather than shooting above their head like a lot of men do, and all men shoot above their head, you see a lot of scooping. You see a lot of women scooping. They're throwing the ball almost underhanded, and you see that a lot. Okay. And because you see that a lot, you see a hell of a lot more blocks in women basketball than men's basketball. I mean, almost like 2-1. You see a lot of blocks because if you get a 7-foot lurch woman from Slovakia in Tennessee's basketball team and put her under the basket, she can just put her hand out and she's blocking any 5'9" guard that's going to come in the paint. So the point is, though, is you remember when people said if you can't make a free throw, start trying to do it in between the legs? Remember the old days where they used to do it between the legs? Why did they do that? Why do they think it's better to do it between the legs as opposed to shoot like this? Do you know?
A free throw is just so routine oriented. If you can just get any kind of motion down, and also it's easier from between the legs to kind of put rotation on the ball, which theoretically.
That goes, and that's all right, but it's the trajectory of the basketball. When you shoot like this, it's going over. When you shoot under, it's going under. It's the same thing it's the same thing as slow pitch softball as opposed to fastball. I mean, it's coming at a different trajectory. So if it's coming in at a different trajectory, then it's bouncing off the backboard and the rim at a different trajectory. And because they are so close, they're trying to scoop that ball up. Not only are they getting blocked, but they're scooping that ball up. And that's why the ball doesn't go in the bucket as much.
I noticed in that WNBA game that I went to that unlike men's basketball, and I never really made note of this before, but men elevate to shoot virtually any shot, even 3-pointers. Yep. They're traditional jumpers. Mm-hmm. There's not very many real jumpers in women's basketball. It's more from kind of it's more of a bend at the knees and follow through kind of thing. They don't elevate to shoot, and like you said, you've typically got a lot taller men, so when they elevate, that makes it really hard to block a shot because they're up, on the same level with the basket. So that's one of the biggest differences that I noted when I went and watched a live women's game.
Now I'll say this, and I saw these 4 squads: Texas, Tennessee, TCU, Notre Dame, and I realized I've seen the best of the best, right?
The best teams, yeah.
First of all, I thought I'm just going to take, because you see these scores, these 95-35 games.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that in an NCAA game.
That's a big problem,
and that is a big time problem.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. There are maybe a dozen at best elite teams in women's college basketball, and the rest of them are terrible.
You will never see a 99-39 game in the NCAA men's tournament.
No chance.
Ever. Even on 1-16. You may see a 35 or 40-point game, but you'll never see a 50 or 60-point game. You won't see a 99-30. You'll never see a game like that in men's. I don't know how you fix that in women's. And I'm thinking to myself, I get it if you take the worst women's team, but we're talking about NCAA tournament teams. We're talking teams that made the big dance, and they're losing by 50.
The best teams in the country.
It's not a good look. And by the way, I know we posted on K4 Wednesday over in the games. I will never bet the over in a women's basketball game again. That's excruciating because I love overs, but it was so difficult because, it was just clunker. Those inside shots was clunker. And the woman in front of me, she was either about ready to beat the shit out of me, or she was actually buying what I was throwing out because she kept looking over her shoulder, and I'm sitting there explaining to my son why I think women are missing these shots. And he's like, well, but the women shoot. I said, well, yeah, well, the ball's an inch short. It's smaller. The ball's smaller. So you can't compare the two. Okay. But what I'm saying is this is why when you watch women's sports, and again, I would have really liked it. It's like the Olympics. Whenever I watch the Olympics, tell me what the damn rules are. I don't know what the rules are. If they would just hand me a piece of paper that says, welcome to this wonderful women's basketball experience, we do it a little differently here. And explain to me, because no one knew how many fouls it took to get to the free throw line. I didn't know that I'm sitting there screaming, get it over the line, get over the line. They're taking 20 seconds to give the line. I didn't even realize that was not a foul.
That is so bizarre. That's the of everything you've said, that's the one that blows me away.
But I will say, the 4 girls I saw, it was the scrappiest basketball I've ever seen. I mean, listen. I used
to play hard.
I used to go to Bell Bottoms and watch women Jello wrestle. I love that. I'm into that kind of thing. We were missing the Jello down at the BJCC the night, but they are scrappy as hell. I mean, they get after it, and to see women get that fired up is really fun to watch. But again, You don't see a lot of post play. You did the other night because you had this woman that was huge. She just could not bank it in. It was, I don't know what she ended up shooting, but she kept trying to bank it in. It just would not go in. And she was like 6'11". Yeah, Miss Lorchet. She was like 6'11", 6'12". I don't know what she was. But she was unbelievable. But she was super huge. But again, we post down in men's basketball and we're backing in. I saw Broom do it a million times to the point where it is so physical. If you've never played basketball and you're reading the rules and it says about hand checking and about touching the body, there are no rules. I mean, you're just going to back a guy down in the post until you get close enough to the basket to shoot it, period. They're never going to call a foul on that. You never see that in women's basketball. You don't ever see, sometimes you do, but you normally don't see a woman, probably because there's not women that size, that are that strong to post down another woman in the paint in order to shoot over. So from a touching standpoint, from a foul standpoint, there isn't a lot of that. There are no instant replays. I didn't see any. I don't think we saw one instant replay all night, which was really welcome, which was really nice.
Thank God you brought that up because Tony, if I never see another referee's back, it'll be a glorious day. That is the worst thing right now in men's college basketball. Is in the last 2 minutes they stop the game constantly.
Every game will stop. Why are we adding 0.5 seconds?
Times.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, the most dominant picture of the game down the stretch, and several of the CBS announcers, I give them credit, have said, oh, well, this is just what we want to see. These guys huddled over at the monitor, trying to decide if there is 0.4 needs to be put back on the clock. It is absolutely ridiculous. They've got to do something about that.
If you stopped after every score and went back to change the time to what it really should be, first of all, the games would be 8-9 hours long. They would be, seriously. I mean, 8-9 hours long.
Already
because you can add a few tenths of a second onto every play.
Every time.
So why are we doing that in the last 2 minutes? Guaranteed, and no one's even asking. If it was 7.8 seconds and they go up and there's a ball that's out of bounds, they're going to go look, even though there wasn't a whistle, they're going to go look and see if they're going to add 0.7 seconds. Or and what happens, Kip, is this gives these teams like 9 and 10 timeouts. I mean, every time they're doing that, they're getting timeouts. If you don't have a timeout left and you're down a couple and you need to stop the clock, you pretty much, your boss is going to say, listen, the ball's going to go out of bounds. They're going to call timeout. They're going to give the circle. I totally agree with you. They got to change that. Listen, I understand that if the clock's running for like 2 seconds after the play goes out and you're getting a little home field or home court advantage, I understand they have to look at something like that. But for the most part,
which was part of the game in the old days.
But they add 2 and 3 tenths of a second every single time. It just screws up the flow. I absolutely hate that. I hope they fix
and
that.
Tony, how did we make calls about who touched the ball last for the last 80 years before we had these replays?
Unbelievable.
Now, if the ball bounced off a guy's head and he kicks it out of bounds, if everybody in America saw that it went off number 22, they have to go to the monitor to confirm it. It's absolutely absurd. Mm-hmm. I once, not to make myself part of the story, but I was in college, I was refereeing high school basketball, including some like lower level, like middle school stuff too. I went to one of the parts of town that you don't typically go to if you're a fellow of my persuasion, and showed up, and the other referee did not show up.
Oh, so you were by yourself, yeah.
I was a solo referee in the most run and gun back and forth game you've ever seen.
I would love that.
I mean, and every call I made, one side of the stands went berserk, and on the other, but I got through it. Nobody molested me or chastised me. The one coach came over and shook my hand and goes, "You did a hell of a job," because that was an impossible task. And but I watch these guys. There's 3 of them, but nobody can make. Did they watch the game? I don't understand.
No, listen. I mean, once in a while, I get it. I mean, I get it sometimes, and I know we want to get the play right. I get that, but I'm all about. I think Major League Baseball does a great job. I'm all about challenges. If you want to take time to challenge, that way you're cut off, you're done. Now, there's going to be a situation where we're going to have challenges, and they do it in the NBA already, and it works. I mean, like there was not a foul there, and they'll go back and look on it, and there wasn't a foul there, and it'll go back the other way. And they also do that for the flagrant thing too is ridiculous. I mean, every time there's an elbow near someone's head, we have to stop a game, even when there's not a foul. I saw that twice this weekend where they went back and looked. They didn't call a foul, but then they go back and look at it and they give them a flagrant one. There wasn't even a foul on the floor. If there's a foul on the floor, and they want to go look at it, and some guy's got a bloody nose, I get it. But if you're not even blowing the whistle. And it seems like it's up to the players. The players like, please look, and they're doing a circle thing. Look. That's ridiculous. But if you want to do a challenge, if you want to do 2 or 3 challenges, I'm all about it. That way, when you're done, you're done.
That's. I saw a game. I think it was one of the Thursday night games where. When they went away, the score was 59-54. When they came back, it was 58-54 because a goal that had been called a 3 about 3 minutes before. When they got to the first amount, they went and goes, that was only a 2.
Can't do that.
I mean, you can't take that point off the board. If you can't make the call at the time, you don't go back 5 minutes later and say, no, we missed that.
I've seen that too, because after the ball's back in play, if they call it and they don't look at it, then it should be done because you run different plays. If you're down by 3, it's about different than being down by 4. No kidding. I mean, imagine you're going in there, you're writing down your thing on your chalkboard or whatever. You got the whole play, and all of a sudden you find out you're down 5 instead of 4. Because they have missed a play.
We have to call this out.
We really do.
We have a responsibility to call this out. I've been chastising soccer for their ridiculous extra time thing forever, but this is equally as absurd.
I have to give it to you.
To play the last 2 minutes of a basketball game now in college and NBA basketball takes a half an hour.
It does.
It's ridiculous.
It really does. It is exciting. I will say that. And it's amazing because, I'm watching an Auburn game the other day and they were up 9 with about a minute and a half left. They got it within 6. And in any regular sport, you're down 6 with 50 something seconds left. You still got a pretty good shot. I don't know what I don't know what in Questco QQQ analytics were or whatever it was. It was probably like 87% chance to win the basketball game. There's 1,000 times 1v1s that game, but we've seen it Kip over and over and over again. A team down by 6. We saw it with Texas Tech the other night. They're up by 9 with 3 minutes left, and you can't lose a ball game like that. I mean, statistically, mathematically speaking, it's almost impossible, and they do. And so I get the fouling thing like that. With that being said, listen, we're trying to polish the perfect diamond here. We're not going to kill the golden goose. It's a wonderful sport. I do think it needs to last longer. The good thing is we do have this thing called the College Basketball Crown, which is going on starting tonight, I believe, in Las Vegas at the MGM. Your son, Case, who joins us on the starting lineup and joins us on 4K Wins. Perhaps he'll go check out some more basketball. We have some basketball games tonight. Utah's playing tonight, Georgia, Washington State. So we have basketball games tonight, tomorrow. I think it runs all week. We also have the NIT. Yeah. So if you're jonesing and you're an addict, you got the DTs or something, you can watch some college hoops for the next few nights until March Madness. While we're doing this thing too, I do think with the 4 number ones, and I realize this is the first time it's happened since 2008. And the amazing thing is that's the last time they played at the Alamo Dome. I don't even know what the chances of that actually happening are. It's amazing. But you got Florida, Auburn, Houston, Duke. In my bracket, I've got Duke playing Florida. I've got Duke winning it all. There's absolutely no reason for me to stray away from that. And for the first time in my life, I went money line on the games. I'm like, I'm stinking tired. Listen. I had that damn Michigan State game. And I said on the show it was my play of the year. Case was giving me all kinds of crap, and I get it. Sometimes you hit, sometimes you don't. I was feeling like a real smart ass.
Well, the biggest reason he was giving you crap on that is because he's just not one of the Tom Izzo admirers. He thinks Tom Izzo's a good coach, but he doesn't think he's an elite coach. That's hard.
I'm sitting there with 4. They're up by 4. They go to the free throw line. My son's sitting there. Of course, he's not a gambler, and I just don't say a word. He goes, Dad, they're up by 4. There's 3 seconds left. And I was like, Santo, I said, he needs to make these 2 free throws. I said, because I've seen so much of this shit. It's unbelievable. And so he makes the second free throw. And what happens? And the thing it went into the bad and just, I was like, talk about a bad beat or a bad push. If you had a 3.5, you were happy as all get out. And of course, we have a guy who does a lot of gambling himself. And he's like, I had so many pushes in the game. But from that point on, I didn't win a game for like a day and a half or two. I must have gone 0-8. I was
killer.
like, I was bitten. I was like, you know what? And so when a game like that hits you sometimes I think it's better just to back off and go, okay, I just got bitten by the gambling fairy here. This is not a good thing to lose a game like that. But I mean, you got to watch to the last minute. So rather than get bitten by that half a point or the push, I said, you know what? And I know your son, his play of the year, and I say play of the year whenever it's a big play and when it hits, he loved Duke on the money line against Auburn the other night. And he said, that's the biggest play I'm making that I can ever remember. And of course, it was minus 280, 285, something like that. The site I was on did not have a money line on it, so I couldn't play it. But I did take Auburn. It was minus 5.5, and it was minus 260. And I was like, man, and because when you're putting down $3 bills, I mean, all of a sudden you're talking about losing close to $800. That's quite a chunk of change to lose in one game, but it's well worth it. So, it's a lot better just to know you have to win the game as opposed to cover the spread. So anyway, going into this weekend, I think it's going to be fantastic. Make sure you watch ABC 3340, starting lineup 10:30, 11 o'clock. What's your initial thoughts on the Final Four, and who do you think is going to take down? Who's going to cut the nets?
Well, I'm kind of pissed off that the two SEC teams have to play.
Yep.
That's just the way it worked out. There were more teams that could have gotten in the mix, but didn't get it done.
Pretty much every round, the SEC had half the field.
Yes, they did, and they still do.
And they still do.
The beauty is the one conference that I can't stand, the Big Ten. Guess how many teams they have in the Final Four?
0.
They started off 10-1 in the tournament, and they were crowing again. The Big Ten is clearly the dominant conference in all college athletics. Blah, blah, blah. I hate the Big Ten. There are 4 major conferences, and there are 3 represented at the Final Four, and the Big Ten is not one of them.
Yes.
I got so much hate mail this year, Tony. That's how I knew my radio show, The Morning After, was a big hit this year.
Yes.
It's been on for 8 years. I got so much hate mail because I would just say every week, no surprise about this or that, because the Big Ten sucks.
Yes.
And boy, they don't like hearing that. When I criticized the committee, Ward Manuel, the athletic director at Michigan, was the chairman. He'd come out and say ridiculous things like, well, we don't really consider strength of schedule very much because it's not the team's fault who they have to play. I
Really?
mean, what are they there for? If you're just going to go by teams win and loss records, which they did, putting Big Ten Indiana in that playoff. So when I started criticizing Ward Manuel, I started getting, well, you're a racist. You're just a typical redneck. I didn't even realize he was a black guy. That had nothing to do with it. I didn't like him because he was the athletic director at Michigan, who had overseen just the year before the biggest scandal in 20 years in college football. The cheating scandal where whatever his name, Stallions, was going and filming the other team's signals in their stadiums prior to Michigan games. But, they got off scot-free and won the national championship. So that's why I don't like Ward Manuel. It had nothing to do with his race. They said, you have a lot of nerve calling him an idiot. He was a scholar citizen. And I said, I have never called another human being an idiot in my entire life. I could say somebody does something that's idiotic, but that's not saying Ward Manuel is an idiot.
To your point, there are 317 teams in college men's basketball. 317. We have Florida, Auburn, Houston, Duke. This is the up-to-date. As a matter of fact, you just posted a second ago. This is the latest SOS, strength of schedule. Duke has got the 9th hardest schedule in college hoops out of 317 teams.
Because so many of the ACC teams were bad.
Florida, 34-4. They have the 6th most difficult schedule in all of basketball. Houston, they have the 5th most difficult conference or schedule in all of basketball, and Auburn is number 1, 32-5 with a rating of 16.4. So all 4 teams, strength of schedule, out of 317 college basketball teams. Don't ever tell me strength of schedule doesn't mean something. Those 4 teams, obviously that went up a little bit because they're in the tournament, right? They're playing really good basketball teams. But those 4 teams in the top 10. So that should tell you something about you coaches out there. If you want to just get W's, that's fine. but they do look at strength of schedule. And we kept talking about the Auburn Tigers losing 3 out of 4, and I thought it was a great point. 3 of those losses were to top 11 teams. They were really good basketball teams. Now you're saying, okay, well, they're supposed to be better than everyone else. They should win those games. Well, sometimes, maybe they just ran out of juice. Maybe they just got down to the bottom. And I will say this, and I've been on Janai Broom quite a bit because I got a chance to actually go see him play at Rupp Arena. I thought he was lazy. I thought he was slow. I said to my son, does he have the flu? He doesn't look right. I had never seen him fluidly for 40 minutes straight. And I was like, wow. But then every single time I tuned the game in, he's got 17 and 16. He's got 21 and 14. He's got 30 and 20. The guy's unbelievable. And the ball doesn't always have to go through him. But for player of the year, I'm still going to go with Cooper Flagg. But I think Janai Broom, he is one of the quietest, greatest basketball players I think I've ever seen. And he backed it up yesterday.
Just a warrior. You talked about how physical. If you haven't played basketball, and I'm going back again 20 years ago. I used to go play like rec ball and just playing pickup games. And you took a beating. If you take the ball to the basket, I was in Philadelphia a couple of years ago with my son. We went to the 2 famous cheesesteak places, Pat's and
nice.
And whoever's his rival. But it's right by a big playground downtown with lights on. We watched an hour of pickup games, all the like teenage kids and young adults in the neighborhood. That brand of basketball was unbelievable, but guys were going to the ground with just thuds on a concrete court. And I mean, it was the most physical thing you've ever seen. Basketball played in its current form is a contact sport every bit of the way. And Janai Broom, I'm convinced, Tony, has just taken such a beating and dished out a beating all year, but that takes a toll on your body too.
I couldn't believe he came back yesterday.
Oh, that was.
He was out. I was like, okay, how's that going to change everything?
Because I think he was convinced I think he thought he had a fracture. I really did. And he went and got the X-ray, and it was like, thank goodness. So
and they were up by 10. They put him back in,
and he made a 3.
Unbelievable. I mean, there's no reason to think that the Auburn Tigers can't win a national title. But for the sake of my bracket, I hope Duke gets it done. I think. And again, I got Duke in Florida, but Duke and Auburn, I take that. And the funny thing is the biggest line is the Duke line over Houston. Houston, all they do is just win. They've won like 19 games in a row. I mean, I don't know. Kelvin Sampson's unbelievable. I don't like him as a person. I think he's a scumbag, but he's a hell of a coach.
Yes, for sure.
And the fact you get Houston plus 4.5 by it to 5, I reached out to your son last night. And
I saw it.
Early line on the Duke game. What do you think? And he actually likes Houston plus the points. He said, I think he had it at 3.5, something like that. It's going to be great, man. I can't believe it. I can't believe it's all going to be over after this next Monday. But well,
I like Houston better now when I see how the players interact with each other, because that's important in team sports. Mm-hmm. And I love the story they told in the Houston game against Tennessee that Roberts, the big man, has been there. He's played 5 straight years because of the COVID rule. There's not many guys that play 5 consecutive years and has been like the star of the team. And it was funny. The guy's 23 years old, Tony, and all of the people on the Houston team call him Gramps and Pops and all that kind of stuff. And they tease him about being on the team back when Akeem Olajuwon was playing there. I mean,
5 slamma jamma.
I love that kind of. I like Houston better now as a group of guys to know that they have that kind of vibe going on.
And you know what? And maybe this is you bring up a really interesting point. Normally the players never screwed with the coach. They were messing with Calvin, putting a hat on his head while he was trying. They screw each other, but they were doing with Izzo this year. The only coach I have not seen that type of relationship with his team is Shire. And I think maybe it's because it's Duke and it's just different. Maybe they do. But I mean, coaches are so cool. I mean, we've seen, not so much Izzo, but we've seen Pearl take the shirt off. He gets into it. He holds the phone up to the face. He's like, who's there? He's doing that whole thing. But you can tell that the coaches just really love their players this year. They always love their players. But this year it just seems like it's a love fest between the coaches and the players. And usually when you see coaches that are players' coaches, they don't go very far. But this year they're certainly doing it.
Mike Krzyzewski might not be John Shire's father, but it's uncanny because you never saw players mess with Coach K either.
No.
And I think Shire is Coach K 2.0.
Dude, I would take him over, and I would take him over Hurley. I would take him over anybody right now. He's just
that is the
amazing
most disciplined, precisioned, well-coached team I've seen in 25 years.
Yeah.
They are really a unit to behold. They have a big challenge against Houston, who, like you say, Houston doesn't know how to lose. No. They've only lost. I think they're 29-1 in their last 30 games. They played the toughest schedule coming out because they played Alabama and Auburn within 4 or 5 days of each other and lost to both of them. So they have 4 losses on the year. 3 of those in overtime and 3 of those in their first 8 games. They've only lost 1 game since.
Their defense this past game was unbelievable. I saw Charles Barkley said, "I've never seen anything like it." They gave up 6 points in the first 12 minutes of the game or something like that. It was insane. It was crazy. All right, man, we can't get here soon enough. I'm gonna go watch some NIT and some college basketball crowns. I took Utah, George Washington, and Washington State tonight. I gotta watch some hardwood. I'm gonna go down and watch some women's basketball later on tonight. You join me if you like. Should be a lot of fun. Go down there and buy a $14 BJCC hot dog.
Oh, it sounds great.
It's the only place in town where the hot dogs cost more than the tickets. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty. And speaking of the SEC, Texas and South Carolina both with unbelievably great teams. So it'll be another Final Four that should have plenty of SEC representation. So that's going to be great. And you mentioned maybe Case Keefer will go to MGM tonight and catch some of the what is it called? The Crown tournament?
It's called the Crown, College Basketball Crown. And before I let you go, because you've been on fire, I want you to give me, because if I'm going to a game live, I've got to put some action on it.
Yeah, of course.
Tonight we got Texas TCU. Texas is giving up 7.5, over under 128.5. And then we have UConn women's against USC. Do you want to take a stab at what that line is? Connecticut.
Oh, it's got to be 14.
15. Yeah.
15. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. There'd be 15 to make a spot for that. We have Super Bowls where we have lines like that too. I guess it happens. Anyway, Texas TCU. What do you like tonight? Should I take?
I give the points. I think Texas is on a mission. They've only lost a couple games all year, and they're both to South Carolina. I think that they are very eager to get back to the Final Four and give the Lady Gamecocks one more try.
All right, I'll get on to that.
I would normally in a game like this with UConn say take the points, but I have no idea how good or bad USC. Maybe they're a Cinderella story, literally here.
They're a 2 seed.
Oh, they are too.
Yeah, they're a 2 seed. I mean, it's one versus 2. So I mean, it's not like they're a lousy team. You're getting 15 points. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I almost say take the points there, because if this is a game to go to the Final Four, they can't be that. But UConn's, how much of that is reputation and how much is it, putting it at that level? Because if they make it 7 or 8, everybody in the country is going to bet UConn.
You're probably right. Maybe that's why they're pushing. I bet you if I wait, I can get it 17.
Probably so, because that's outrageous for a final.
They sucker on those over unders too. The damn over unders, because I had the over 144 in the Tennessee game, and I did it because K4 Wins had it as a play, and I usually don't play our plays because I don't want to jinx anything. And of course, it went well one under after the first quarter. You do the math in your head. Like the first quarter looks like it's 86-80. Shit.
I went 11-4 this week on hockey, so you're betting the wrong sport.
We got a full slate of hockey tonight. I'm going to be on board, and I promise I will not try to ruin you. By the way, real quick too, I'm watching that Bama Duke game. The line was 6.5, 150 or 173, 174, whatever it was. It was kind of fluctuating a little bit. And I couldn't figure out who to play. I just could not figure it out. And I did what I always do. I thought, who do the books need? And I said, there ain't no one, not one person on the face of the earth that's taking Alabama's team total under 84, because they had just scored 113. They're averaging 94. They're averaging 94 in the tournament. They're averaging over 90. There's no way in hell, particularly with that style of basketball where they're getting up and down the floor. And I realize they made 25 threes. There's no way in hell that anyone's playing Alabama's team total under 84. I put $1 on it, and of course it hit 65 on hit. So maybe I'm getting a little smart here because I knew everyone loved Alabama and the over in that game.
Well, that's a good way to look at it. And that's, my brother and I, my late brother, unfortunately, used to look at games like that when we what is Vegas's intention with this line is kind of how we would look at it. Which way do they want you to go? And we always try to bet the other way and had some pretty good success with that at one time.
All right, brother.
Real quick, before we wrap it up, real quick.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I don't really bet sports now, I give you my opinions, but I really don't place any money on it. Not because I'm cheap or miserly. It just makes me. I had a horrendous experience as a kid, and you'll definitely get that when I tell you, because it just like your bad beat last week with the Ole Miss game in Michigan State. When I was in 8th grade, in the finals of the NBA, it was the Seattle Supersonics, who they're no more now. They're the Oklahoma Thunder. The Seattle Supersonics against the Washington Bullets, which at that time had Elvin Hayes, speaking of Houston, the Big E. And that game that series went 7 games. Seattle won it in miracle fashion with downtown Freddie Brown and Jack Sikma. And
what year was that?
1977 or 8.
Yeah, so I was going to say 76. Yeah, 77, 78. Yeah, I think it was 78.
Anyway, the very end of that game, Freddie Brown went to the line, made 2 free throws. Seattle, I think, was a 2 or 3 point favorite. That pushed it, just like you said, to 4. They inbound the ball. It gets fumbled away. Elvin Hayes at center court, the center, picks it up and literally flings it with one arm. It banks in and beats my dad, who had given 2, and the game was the 2 free throws made it 3. He's going, we got to have these free throws. Dramatically, Brown makes the free throws, and Elvin Hayes with one hand flings it up, and it was only a 2-point goal then. There was no such thing as 3-pointers. Even from half court, it was only 2, but Seattle wins by 1, and my dad fell on the floor and laid there motionless for like a half hour. I thought he might have passed away. It was very traumatic.
Oh, man. And we all have that. We all have that one that when it keeps coming back, because it seems like we have a lot more of this bad beats than we have the good wins. We just choose not to want to remember this. But I was at the what was the hotel, the Las Vegas. It was downtown.
It was Golden Nugget, or
no? It was called the Las Vegas. It's no longer there anymore.
Okay.
Anyway, we had room. I had gone there and gotten drunk and did really well one year, and they took care of all of us. There was a dozen of us. We were eating free dinners, everything else. And I had the biggest bet I've ever had on a basketball game, and it was Philadelphia and Boston in the NBA. And I'm sitting there, and their book was way in the back, and it was a musty little place. What the hell is the name of that place called? It had Las Vegas in its title. Anyway,
like down on Fremont Street.
Yeah, down on Fremont. And so I go back, and I've had enough. I'm getting killed on the day. I'm betting with my guy back here at home. So I don't have to put money up at the casinos, and I'm playing blackjack. And they're up 32 with a minute left in the third quarter, and they're up 32, and I'm giving them minus 3.5. I'm like, and I know you never say it's in. You don't ever say it looks good. And this schlep rock walks up to me and just sits right in my space. And I'm sitting there, I'm drunk, and I got my Jack and Coke, and he's like, hey, and I'm like, hey, and I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just happy this game. I just want to watch the game come in. Minus 3.5. They're up 31 with a minute left. And he's like, who do you got? And I'm like, and at that point, you either tell them who you got and go with it, knowing that it has nothing to bear on the outcome of the game. It doesn't. Or you tell them you got the other side in hopes that maybe some reverse psychology. So I did. I told him I had Boston.
Oh, okay.
Plus 3.5. He's like, well, you're screwed there, dude. That's never going to happen.
Oh.
And when someone says it's never going to happen, it's like he's never going to miss.
It's automatic.
It's automatic. When someone says it's automatic, or you got this, or it's in, gamblers know you never go to a guy until you see all the zeros. It's in. And they got outscored by 36 points, 46 to 10 in the final period, and Boston not only won the game but covered the 3.5. I remember sitting there, and I remember it was like a minute and a half, and it was down to like 9, and this little piece of shit was not leaving my side. He was going to stay there with me and make sure I lost that basketball game. I went back to the window, I came back, and he followed me around the casino in hopes and I was like, dude, leave me the hell alone. And I mean, you ever watch the movie The Cooler? They used to send people back in the 40s and 50s. They take they take a guy that was really, really bad gambler, and they would put him on the floor. And in lieu of paying his money, if he was really into it, he had some serious chips out. They would make them go around and just touch people, and it would just bring bad luck to people. If someone was having a great run at a blackjack table, you'd send a cooler over. He'd place his hand on your shoulder. Next thing you know, you're losing 16 hands in a row. And for some reason, it works. It's a great movie called The Cooler.
There are people like that.
There are people
really
like that. And I forget who was in it. The guy who was in Fargo was in it. Anyway, and I lost that game, and I still to this day remember that. And I still thought to myself, and if had I stopped right there, I'd probably be a millionaire. But you know,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, my man. Get on it. We'll talk coming up here. That was like an hour podcast. That was great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, you can cut the 8 minutes that I
No,
fumbled
it's all good, dude. It's a joy. I can talk all day long. We'll get after it Saturday, man. Best of luck. K4 wins. We have our Final Four edition coming up this Friday, and then, of course, our big show on Saturday. So we got 4 teams to look at, and we're going to dice it and slice it, and we'll have your winners for you. So check it out. Have a great day, my friend.
Same to you, Tony. Thanks.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.